In the forgotten depths of a decrepit, ancient forest, the Harrison family bore the weight of an agonizing secret. 15 years had passed since their eldest daughter, Eliza, vanished into the heart of those sinister woods, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. The Harrisons had long since retreated from the limelight, hiding their grief behind closed doors. In the solitude of their remote cabin, they clung to their remaining hope, a vivacious 5-year-old girl named Lily, blissfully unaware of the darkness that lurked in the shadows of her family's history. One ominous evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the forest seemed to breathe with a life of its own, Lily played alone in the garden. Her laughter, so innocent, so pure, echoed through the air until it faltered, replaced by an eerie hush. A haunting voice, like the rustle of long-forgotten secrets, beckoned her from the wood's edge. Compelled by an unseen force, Lily followed the voice into the darkness of the forest. Each step felt like a descent into a nightmare. The trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky, and the earth beneath her feet seemed to pulse with an ancient malevolence. As she ventured deeper, her senses tingled with a growing unease. Finally, in a small clearing shrouded by the tangled canopy, Lily's eyes met the chilling gaze of a young woman, a mere specter of what she might have been. Lily gasped, her heart hammering in her chest, for the stranger bore an uncanny resemblance to the faded photograph of her missing sister Eliza, hidden away in an attic drawer. The spectral figure, Eliza, regarded her with hollow eyes, her voice like an icy wind whispering secrets never meant to be unearthed. She spoke of a hidden truth, revealing that the Harrison parents had known far more than they ever let on. Eliza's disappearance was no accident. It was a dark ritual, a sacrifice to protect the family from the malevolence that had taken root within her. Lily's world shattered as she pieced together the horrifying puzzle of her family's past. She understood the unbearable weight of her parents' guilt, the sinister choice they had made to preserve the life they had left. The forest closed in around her, an insidious force that sought to claim her. In the shadowy abyss, the truth emerged, and the Harrison family's sins were exposed, a torment that would haunt them for eternity. And as the forest swallowed her whole, Lily's innocent existence dissolved into the dark legacy of her family. In their isolation, they would forever grapple with the sinister secrets buried within, their lives a perpetual nightmare. As Lily delved deeper into the mysteries of the forest, she discovered a hidden journal that once belonged to her parents. Its pages revealed their desperate attempts to seal away the malevolent force that had taken hold of Eliza. The journal hinted at a ritual, a way to imprison the darkness forever. With newfound determination, Lily sought to complete the ritual, believing it to be the only way to free her family from the torment of Eliza's vengeful spirit. Guided by cryptic symbols and long-forgotten incantations, she led her parents to the very clearing where they had first encountered the darkness. The night was thick with tension as the ritual commenced. The forest itself seemed to resist their efforts, the very trees conspiring to thwart their intentions. Eliza's presence grew stronger, her spectral form materializing before them, a sinister embodiment of their past. In a climactic showdown, Lily, her parents, and the vengeful Eliza engaged in a battle of wills. The forest erupted in a storm of malevolence, with the fate of the Harrison family hanging in the balance. In a final desperate act, Lily recited the incantation, channeling the power of the ritual. The forest convulsed, and Eliza's form flickered and waned. With a final bone-chilling scream, she was sealed away, imprisoned within the very trees that had harbored her darkness for so long. The forest fell silent, the curse lifted, and the Harrison family was finally free from the nightmare that had haunted them for years. Their home was no longer a place of dread, and peace descended upon their lives. But the forest, now bereft of its sinister inhabitant, remained a place of shadows and secrets, a reminder of the darkness that could be unleashed by those who dared to venture too deep into its depths. As the years passed, the Harrison family returned to a semblance of normalcy, scarred but together. They knew that the forest would always hold its secrets, but they had paid the price for their actions, and they had learned that some mysteries were best left undisturbed. And so, The story of the Harrison family came to an end. A tale of darkness and redemption. A cautionary tale of the consequences of meddling with forces beyond our comprehension. The forest, once a place of fear, now stood as a testament to the enduring strength of a family's love and their ability to confront the darkest corners of their past. Remember, dear listener, that some secrets are born of darkness, lurking in the corners of our minds, waiting to consume us. The forest may seem tranquil, but within its depths, horrors unimaginable take root. Sweet dreams for the night hold terrors you can scarcely fathom. You know the feeling when you are home alone, but don't feel alone? The air in the house had grown still, unnaturally so. Shadows danced menacingly across the walls as the flickering light cast eerie shapes. I was home alone, and I could feel something was terribly wrong. I was just a young child at the time. My parents had left me alone for only 3 hours, but it felt like an eternity. As the ominous quiet settled in, my heart raced, and a sense of foreboding wrapped itself around me like a shroud. I clung to the phone, trying to dial my parents' number, but the cordless handset was dead. Panic set in, and I sprinted through the dimly lit house, searching for the one thing that could help me feel safe: the light switch. The lights flickered with an otherworldly intensity, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach out for me. I had never seen anything like it before. The once familiar rooms now felt alien, as if I had stepped into a different dimension. It was then that I heard the first knock, a soft, chilling tap on the front door. My heart pounded in my chest as I tiptoed towards the door. My small hand reached for the handle, trembling with fear. I cracked it open just enough to peer outside into the inky blackness. There was nothing there, only the eerie silence of the night. I closed the door and retreated back into the house. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, I thought, desperately trying to convince myself that all was well. But as I made my way to the living room, the knocks on the front door grew louder and more persistent. 3 sharp, distinct raps seemed to resonate through my very soul. My courage waned, but I had to know who was outside. Gathering every ounce of strength, I once again approached the door. This time I flung it open with a defiant courage I didn't know I possessed. The sight that met my eyes sent shivers down my spine. There, standing on the porch, was a figure that should not exist. A translucent, ghostly figure, its face a twisted mask of anguish and longing. Its hollow eyes stared into mine, and in that moment, I felt like it could see right through me, into the darkest corners of my soul. Terror coursed through my veins as the apparition slowly extended its bony, ethereal hand towards me as if beckoning me to come closer. I slammed the door shut, my heart pounding and my body drenched in cold sweat. The knocking continued, now more fervent, as if the spirit outside was growing increasingly impatient. I retreated further into the house, but the sense of isolation and vulnerability hung over me like a heavy shroud. I desperately needed to contact my parents, but the phones remained stubbornly lifeless. I found myself in the dimly lit kitchen, my breath ragged, when a whisper echoed through the stillness. A ghostly voice, barely audible, called my name. It hissed, sending chills down my spine. My name, spoken by a voice from beyond, paralyzed me with fear. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I desperately pleaded with the unseen presence. "Who are you? What do you want?" There was no response, only a maddening, eerie silence that was broken by the relentless pounding on the front door. With trembling hands, I reached for a nearby kitchen knife, a feeble attempt at self-defense against the unknown. Hours dragged on, and the paranormal encounter showed no signs of abating. The lights continued to flicker, the ghostly figure outside still beckoned, and the voice whispered my name with an unnerving frequency. The atmosphere in the house had grown thick with malevolence, and it was suffocating me. As the night wore on, my fear turned into a desperate longing for my parents to return, for their comforting presence to dispel the haunting entities that had invaded our home. But the clock on the wall seemed frozen, as if time itself had become an unwilling captive in this surreal nightmare. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the first rays of dawn began to filter through the windows. The paranormal encounters had lessened in intensity, and the ghostly figure had retreated into the obscurity of the night. The house felt almost normal, though the memory of that long, terrifying night would forever haunt me. When my parents returned, I clung to them, recounting the horror that had unfolded in their absence. I expected them to dismiss it as the overactive imagination of a child, but to my astonishment, they exchanged uneasy glances. It seemed they, too, had experienced something strange that night, something they couldn't explain. To this day, we can never fully make sense of that night. It was a night when the realms of the living and the dead collided, when a young child came face to face with the supernatural. And though we tried to forget, the echoes of that haunting encounter would forever linger in the darkest corners of our minds, a chilling reminder that there are mysteries in this world that we may never truly comprehend. Of a quiet suburban town, Sarah, a dedicated dispatcher, settled into her dimly lit office. The hum of computer screens and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights filled the room. As the clock approached midnight, Sarah's eyelids grew heavy, and she sipped her lukewarm coffee, determined to stay awake. Just when she thought the night would be uneventful, a chilling call came in. Sarah answered the call with her usual calm demeanor, but the voice on the other end sent shivers down her spine. It was a low, raspy whisper, barely audible, like a ghost's lament. "Help me," it pleaded. "They're coming." Sarah's heart raced as she strained to make out more details. The caller's words were cryptic, filled with fear and desperation. The caller mentioned an address that didn't exist on any map in town. Sarah pulled up her resources, but there was no record of such a place. Panic crept into her voice as she desperately tried to pinpoint the caller's location. The whispering voice grew more frantic, insisting that Sarah must find them before it was too late. With a determination bordering on obsession, Sarah embarked on a relentless quest to uncover the truth behind the call. She enlisted the help of her colleagues, tracing the call's origin and cross-referencing it with missing person reports. As the pieces of the puzzle slowly fell into place, a horrifying picture emerged. The address mentioned in the call led Sarah and her team to an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. Once a place of unimaginable suffering, it had been closed for years. The decrepit building seemed to loom menacingly in the moonlight. Sarah's heart pounded as she and the police officers cautiously entered the asylum's shadowy corridors. Whispers in the dark. Inside the asylum, the air grew thick with a suffocating dread. The flickering light of flashlights revealed ancient, rusted restraints and decaying beds. As they ventured deeper, they heard whispers, unearthly voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The asylum was alive with an eerie, otherworldly presence. Unholy encounters. The search for the caller led to a room that contained cryptic symbols and eerie drawings etched on the walls. The whispers grew louder and more sinister. The team's flashlights flickered and died one by one, leaving them in total darkness. In that suffocating void, they felt unseen hands closing around their throats. Inside the asylum, the air was laden with a stifling dread that suffocated the search party with its putrid weight. The flickering amber beams cast by the officers' flashlights cut through the impenetrable darkness, illuminating the sinister remains of the institution's gruesome past. Ancient rusted medical beds with worn leather straps stood as relics from a barbaric era of misguided medicine, while thick layers of dust covering decaying furniture hinted at the asylum's decades of abandonment. As the team ventured deeper into the dilapidated wards, the atmosphere grew more ominous. They began to hear whispers and murmurs, soft as a haunting breeze, as if the asylum itself was stirring to life. The unearthly voices seemed to emanate from within the very walls, echoing ever so faintly through the crumbling corridors. It was clear this place had been imprinted by the souls of those who had suffered unthinkable torment while confined here. An eerie, otherworldly presence pervaded the asylum, like a shadowy phantom that had permeated every stone and every sinew. Driven by the cryptic plea for help from the mysterious caller, Sarah continued to lead the search, her heartbeat competing with the sound of creaking floorboards under each tentative step. The further they explored the abandoned wings, the louder the spectral whispers around them became, as if defying the team's encroachment. Turning a corner, they discovered a room scarred with unsettling occult symbols and glyphs etched deeply into the walls. Some appeared to be archaic summoning rituals, while others depicted demonic entities and foul monsters. The entire chamber seemed to hum with some peculiar malevolent energy. Then, suddenly, the whispers amplified into a cacophony of hushed, chaotic voices, sinister and otherworldly. The officer's flashlight started to flicker, threatening to plunge the room into absolute darkness. As the last amber beams faded, void-like darkness enveloped the search team, who huddled together in blind disorientation. A heavy, oppressive dread weighed upon their throats, as if ghostly hands were clawing at their neck in warning. Sarah shook off the spectral grasp and rallied her disconcerted colleagues. Fumbling in the impenetrable blackness, her hands alighted on a weathered, leather-bound journal concealed in a decrepit bedside cabinet. Fighting her trembling nerves, she began to read the book's contents using the illumination from flickering candlelight. The journal was a doctor's diary from decades past, belonging to the asylum's last medical superintendent. As Sarah turned the pages, an unsettling portrait emerged of a once-respected man whose obsession with the mysteries of life and death had steadily corrupted his mind. The diary described his experimental treatments performed on patients without consent, from dissecting living subjects to studying the effects of electroshock performed during arcane rituals underneath the asylum under the cover of night. Ultimately, the doctor became convinced he could cheat death through his machinations and achieve immortality. However, it transpired that his depraved experiments had unleashed something wicked into the walls of the asylum, an ancient malevolent force that granted dark knowledge and corrupted mortal minds. The spirits of his tortured victims now aimlessly haunted the wards, unable to move on from the horrors inflicted upon them. Sarah felt her head swimming as the awful reality set in. This was no ordinary abandoned building, but a place steeped in unspeakable suffering, where the veil between worlds had been ripped apart. A ripple of panic spread among the search team, who were now desperate to flee the nightmare of otherworldly horrors. But escape would not come easy. As the officers scrambled down the gloomy corridors, guided only by flashlight beams restored as mysteriously as they had vanished, it became clear they were not alone. Unsettling whispers and shrieking howls permeated the stale air once more, only now they seemed somehow closer, more substantial. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream rang out from the back of the group. Spinning around, Sarah's blood turned to ice as she saw several shadowy, spectral figures reaching out towards them. Their distorted, anguished faces were difficult to discern, shifting in form from caught death victims to lobotomized adolescents to deformed monstrosities. These were the tormented souls of the asylum's victims, bound eternally to the place of their suffering by the doctor's malevolent experiments. Sarah realized to her horror that the spirits were goading them back towards the ritual chamber. They sought vengeance against all living souls that trespassed here. Panic threatened to overwhelm Sarah's mind as the team fled down endless corridors, pursued by the vengeful spirits who seemed to permeate the very walls of this place. Their unearthly shrieks and desperate pleas created a deafening cacophony that drowned out all rational thought. Blind terror gripped them all. Even the armed officers were reduced to whimpering wrecks and muttering fragments of prayers. It felt as though the asylum's dark history was bleeding out into the present, turning the world upside down and threatening to plunge them all into madness. After what seemed like hours of stumbling through the haunted maze, a glimmer of hope emerged. Sarah spotted the entrance up ahead, the dilapidated front doors illuminated by soft moonlight. With lungs fit to burst, they made a final dash and burst out into the cool night air. Collapsing in exhaustion on the overgrown lawn, Sarah glanced back to see an impenetrable gloom clogging the asylum's doorway. Only muffled wails could be heard from within its cursed walls. They had made it out with their lives, but but not their sanity intact. In the days that followed, Sarah discovered that some of the officers from that night had handed in their badges, too traumatized to ever return to duty. For Sarah herself, life could never be the same again. The chilling call had drawn back the veil on a legacy of suffering that transcended the boundaries of life and death. In the years that passed, she was unable to shake the memory of that malevolent presence in the old asylum, nor the twisted visions that still haunted her dreams. She often wondered if those tormented souls were still bound to those walls, waiting for the day when another unsuspecting soul might pass over the threshold and answer their whispered cries for help. All she could do was hope that the secrets of the dead would remain buried beneath the dust, so that no one else would fall prey to the sinister malevolence within. In the years that followed, Sarah could never shake the feeling that the whispers of that night still lingered, waiting for another unsuspecting soul to answer the call. The Curse of the Abandoned Hospital. Chapter 1. The Abandoned Asylum. Nestled on the outskirts of town, the decaying remnants of the insane hospital cast a foreboding pall over the serene landscape. Its once imposing facade is now crumbled and weather-worn, bearing the scars of decades of torment and despair. Within those dilapidated walls, the asylum held the chilling echoes of agonized screams that had reverberated through its sinister corridors. A place where the line between sanity and madness had blurred. It lay dormant, biding its time. But the shadows of the past were stirring, drawing unwitting souls toward an inevitable and harrowing fate. Chapter 2. A Fateful Gathering. Under the cloak of nightfall, a group of friends gathered, their faces marked by a peculiar blend of curiosity and thrill-seeking bravado. Their vehicles parked in eerie proximity, the ominous silhouette of the asylum beckoned them closer, its crumbling walls whispering secrets they yearned to unveil. Armed with an array of flashlights and cameras, they hesitantly crossed the threshold, surrendering themselves to the impending darkness that awaited within. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Dark. As the nocturnal veil descended upon the asylum, the initial excitement of the group gave way to an unsettling hush. Mysterious whispers, as if uttered by unseen lips, threaded through the stale air. Eerie apparitions danced at the periphery of their vision, darting into shadowy recesses before their gaze could fully capture them. Each advancing step into the asylum's depths seemed to tighten the noose of dread around their hearts, shrouding them in a disquieting pall. Chapter 4. Unholy Encounters. Their journey into the asylum's bowels led them to confrontations with malevolent forces far beyond their comprehension. The spirits of the asylum's tormented souls manifested with increasing malevolence, their wretched visages etched in eternal torment. Objects levitated of their own accord, and spectral moans reverberated through the decaying chambers. Panic mounted as they realized they were no longer alone. They had unwittingly stumbled upon a nightmarish realm where the boundary between the living and the dead had blurred into obscurity. Chapter 5. A Terrifying Revelation. In their relentless pursuit of the asylum's dark secrets, the beleaguered group stumbled upon an ominous chamber concealed within the labyrinthine depths. The chamber's walls were adorned with the fevered scribblings of a former inmate, their words etched in madness. These writings unveiled tales of ancient and sinister rituals, describing a curse that irrevocably bound the tortured souls of the asylum's victims to its maleficent confines. Cryptic symbols and eerie incantations filled the air as they delved deeper into the foreboding revelations, slowly comprehending the grim destiny that awaited them. Chapter 6. The Survivor's Tale. As the night deepened and the asylum's malevolence tightened its grip on the hapless group, only one member, a young woman of indomitable spirit, managed to elude the clutches of the relentless horrors that lurked within. Her escape would become both a blessing and a curse, for while she survived to tell the tale, the trauma she endured left indelible scars on her psyche. When she later recounted the unimaginable horrors she had witnessed within those walls, her voice trembled with the weight of her ordeal, and her eyes betrayed a haunting vacancy that spoke of the unspeakable. Chapter 7. An ominous cloud years crept by like slow-moving shadows, yet the terror of that cursed night refused to relent. Inexorably, the members of the ill-fated group met their untimely demises, each demise more gruesome and unfathomable than the last. An ominous cloud of dread settled over their once tranquil town, its residents living in perpetual fear, unable to escape the looming specter of a vengeful spirit that whispered malevolently in the dark corners of their minds. Chapter 8. The Haunting Echoes. One fateful night, as relentless rain lashed the town streets and the skies wept, a succession of cars succumbed to mysterious breakdowns near the abandoned asylum. Seeking shelter from the tempestuous weather, the stranded travelers unknowingly crossed into the realm of the vengeful spirits, stirring the dormant malevolence that lay within the asylum's forsaken walls. As the night wore on, the asylum's sinister history resurfaced with a vengeance, subjecting the helpless travelers to nightmarish visions and unrelenting torment. Desperation and terror became their steadfast companions as they waged a futile battle against the asylum's inescapable grip. Chapter 9. Nightmarish Ordeal. The horrors that had festered within the asylum's haunted confines now emerged with insidious glee. The stranded travelers, like lambs, led to the slaughter and became ensnared in a nightmarish ordeal. Visions of unspeakable dread assailed their senses, and their tortured screams echoed through the dimly lit corridors. With each passing moment, desperation and terror clung to their hearts like a suffocating shroud, and they fought with every ounce of strength to break free from the asylum's malevolent clutches. Chapter 10. The Haunting Continues. Only one among them, a young girl, emerged from the crucible of nightmarish horrors that had consumed her companions. Her psyche shattered into a mosaic of fear and despair, and bore the indelible scars of the asylum's cruelty. In the years that followed, her voice could be heard on the nearest road, a spectral echo of her torment. Driven by a vengeful rage she could never quell, her ghost emerged by night, casting an eerie pall over the town. She became a harbinger of inexplicable accidents, her spectral presence pointing accusatory fingers at those who had unwittingly condemned her to an unjust and eternal death. The asylum's curse lived on, an enduring testament to the malevolent power that dwelled within its cursed walls, and the town remained ensnared in its grip, forever haunted by the darkness that could not be vanquished. I'm so scared now. I don't know what happened to me. What was I seeing? But first, let me tell you my story. The ominous Halloween moon night swallowed the winding road ahead of me as I made my way to a Halloween party like no other. The dense fog clung to the asphalt, weaving an eerie tapestry of uncertainty, and the sinister aura of the night played tricks on my mind. My heart raced with anticipation, partly from the excitement of the party, and partly from the unsettling atmosphere that the night had conjured. The road twisted and turned, and every corner seemed to conceal some lurking malevolence waiting to leap out at me. I had chosen to take this secluded back road to the party, much to my friends' dismay. They had warned me about the old legends, tales of spectral encounters, and paranormal occurrences that had been whispered through the town for generations. As I drove, my headlights revealed a faint figure ahead. She stood at the roadside, clad in a ghostly costume, her white dress billowing eerily in the breeze. I decided to pull over, thinking it was a fellow partygoer in need of a lift. The woman, seemingly in her 20s, stepped into the dim glow of my car's interior, and I could barely make out her face beneath the sheer white veil. "Thanks for stopping," she whispered with an otherworldly quality in her voice. Her ethereal presence sent shivers down my spine, but I shrugged it off as a Halloween prank. The mysterious passenger told me that she was also headed to the same party and had been walking from a nearby town. Her story seemed plausible, so I continued driving, trying to engage her in conversation, but she remained eerily silent. The silence only added to the growing unease that had settled in the car. Finally, we arrived at the location, a seemingly abandoned mansion that had been transformed for the night's festivities. As I parked the car and turned to let the woman out, I was met with a chilling sight. The back seat was empty, devoid of the spectral passenger who had been there moments before. Panic overcame me as I rushed out of the car and circled it, searching for any sign of her. I couldn't fathom how she could have disappeared in such a short time. Desperation led me to approach the entrance of the mansion, my heart pounding. There, waiting for me, was the same woman in the ghostly costume, her pale visage obscured by the veil. She gave a faint, unsettling smile and beckoned me forward, her figure disappearing into the fog that enveloped the entrance. My steps faltered as I tried to make sense of this impossible situation. Had she somehow managed to get ahead of me? Was this all a bizarre Halloween prank? I approached the entrance, my hesitation growing with each step. When I finally reached the doorway, the woman was nowhere to be found. Instead, I was greeted by my friends, who had been eagerly awaiting my arrival. As I tried to explain what had happened, they exchanged bewildered glances, denying any knowledge of the woman I described. "She never entered the party," they said in unison, their expressions of confusion genuine. My spine tingled with fear as I questioned my sanity. Had I hallucinated the entire encounter? The night continued with revelry and laughter, but I couldn't shake the unsettling memory of the mysterious woman in the ghostly costume. I spoke with many partygoers, desperately searching for any sign of recognition, but to no avail. It was as if she had never existed. As the party wound down, I found myself standing outside, my gaze fixed on the fog-shrouded road where I had picked up the spectral passenger. It was only my imagination. Was the fog, or was it really a ghost? The question haunted me, leaving me to ponder the chilling possibility that I had encountered something supernatural that Halloween night. What do you think it was? Let me know in the comments. On a moonless night in the heart of the countryside, a lonely country road stretched into darkness. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant howling of wind through the trees. Mark, a weary traveler on his way home, was driving along this desolate road when he spotted a flicker of light up ahead. As he approached, he saw a woman standing beside her broken-down car, her face illuminated by the faint glow of her hazard lights. Her long, dark hair billowed in the night breeze, and her eyes reflected a mixture of desperation and fear. Mark felt a sense of obligation to help her. He pulled over and stepped out of his car, the gravel crunching beneath his feet. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. The woman turned to him, her eyes wide with relief. "Oh, thank goodness you stopped. My car just died and I don't know what to do. I've been waiting here for hours." Mark offered a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I'll take a look." He approached the woman's car, but as he leaned over the engine, he couldn't help but notice a strange, unsettling sensation. It was as if an icy hand had brushed against his neck, sending shivers down his spine. Ignoring it, he tried to diagnose the problem. Minutes turned into hours as Mark worked diligently to repair the car. The woman watched him intently, her eyes never leaving him. As he finally fixed the issue, he turned to her with a smile. "There. It should be running fine now." The woman's expression changed suddenly, her eyes filled with an unnatural darkness. "Thank you," she said, her voice taking on an eerie tone. "But I have one more request." Unease settled over Mark, but he couldn't refuse. "What is it?" "Could you give me a ride to the lake up ahead? I need to get there before sunrise." Mark hesitated for a moment, his instincts warning him of something amiss. Nonetheless, he agreed to help her further. She got into the car, and they continued down the road towards the lake. As they approached the lake, the atmosphere grew even more ominous. Mist rolled in from the water, obscuring the surroundings. The woman directed Mark to a remote spot by the shore, and he parked the car. "Now," she said, her voice colder than the night air. "I need you to close your eyes and count to 10. Mark obeyed, closing his eyes and counting slowly. When he opened them again, the woman was gone. Panic surged through him as he realized he was alone by the dark, silent lake. Suddenly, he felt a presence in the back seat of his car. He turned to see the woman's ghostly figure, her eyes filled with a haunting, malevolent energy. Mark screamed and tried to flee, but his car's engine roared to life, accelerating uncontrollably towards the lake. As the car plunged into the icy waters, Mark's last vision was of the woman's ghostly form, her twisted smile reflected in the rearview mirror. The car sank beneath the surface, and Mark's desperate gasps for air were silenced by the cold embrace of the lake. From that night on, locals spoke of the haunted lake and the ghostly woman who lured unsuspecting travelers to their doom. Mark's fate served as a chilling reminder never to stop on that desolate country road at night, for the horrors that lurked in the darkness were far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. Years passed, and the legend of the haunted lake grew, casting a shadow of fear over the countryside. Travelers avoided the lonely country road, and those who dared to venture near the lake did so with trepidation. But the story didn't end with Mark's tragic demise. His spirit, restless and tormented, found no peace at the bottom of the lake. Instead, it was said that he roamed the shoreline, a phantom figure searching for answers and seeking revenge against the malevolent spirit that had ensnared him. Local residents shared eerie tales of encounters with Mark's ghost. Some claimed to have seen a pale, soaked figure walking along the water's edge, his eyes filled with despair. Others reported hearing anguished cries and mournful wails echoing in the dead of night, as if the very air itself carried Mark's torment. As for the vengeful spirit that had caused Mark's tragic end, it seemed her malevolence knew no bounds. She continued to appear on the country road, her dark hair billowing in the wind, her eyes reflecting a sinister intent. Her reputation as a malevolent entity grew, and her name became synonymous with dread among the locals. One fateful evening, a group of thrill-seekers decided to investigate the legend of the haunted lake. Armed with cameras and recording equipment, they ventured to the forsaken spot where Mark had met his doom. They had heard the stories, and they were determined to capture evidence of the supernatural. As they approached the lake, the mist thickened, and the atmosphere grew oppressively cold. They set up their equipment and began their investigation, calling out to the spirits that were said to haunt the area. It wasn't long before they felt a chilling presence, an otherworldly energy that sent shivers down their spines. Suddenly, Mark's ghostly figure materialized before them, his eyes filled with a mixture of anguish and anger. He beckoned for them to follow him, leading them towards the water's edge. The thrill-seekers, consumed by fear and curiosity, followed. As they reached the shore, the malevolent spirit appeared, her presence even more ominous than the tales had described. She let out a blood-curdling scream, her dark intentions clear. It was a terrifying showdown between the vengeful specter and Mark's tormented soul. The cameras rolled, capturing the eerie confrontation as it unfolded. Mark's ghostly figure confronted the malevolent spirit, his determination to find closure evident. In the ensuing struggle, a blinding flash of light engulfed them both, and a deafening roar echoed across the lake. When the light subsided, the malevolent spirit was gone, vanquished by the combined energy of Mark's restless soul and the courageous thrill-seekers who had come seeking the truth. Mark's ghost, finally at peace, gave them a sorrowful smile before slowly fading away, his purpose fulfilled. The legend of the haunted lake endured, but its malevolent presence was no more. The countryside road, once shrouded in fear, gradually regained its tranquility. Travelers ventured down that path once again, with the knowledge that the darkness had been banished and that the restless spirit of Mark had found the peace he so desperately sought. And so, the story of the haunted lake became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the power of malevolence, the resilience of the human spirit, and the importance of seeking closure in the face of darkness. Crisp October air sent a shiver down my spine as I approached the old, decrepit mansion on the outskirts of town. Its ancient timbers groaned with every gust of wind, and the gnarled trees in the yard cast eerie, elongated shadows in the dim moonlight. It was the setting for the most anticipated Halloween party of the year, and I couldn't resist the allure of spending the night in a place that whispered of ghosts and secrets. The moment I stepped inside, A wave of unease washed over me. The mansion was adorned with cobwebs and flickering candles, casting flickering shadows on the peeling wallpaper. My footsteps echoed through the hallways, and I had to suppress a shiver as I thought of the tales I'd heard about this place. Stories of hauntings, disappearances, and unholy rituals. The party was in full swing, with guests donning elaborate costumes that ranged from classic monsters to the most inventive, chilling creations. I mingled with the crowd, trying to mask my unease with laughter and drinks. The drinks flowed freely, and the music pulsed in time with my racing heart. As the night wore on, the mansion seemed to come alive with sinister energy. In one corner, a fortune teller with piercing, cloudy eyes read tarot cards for a group of partygoers, speaking in hushed tones that sent shivers down their spines. In another room, a seance was taking place, a circle of people clasping hands as they called upon spirits from the great beyond. The flickering candlelight seemed to dance with the restless souls of the mansion's past. As midnight approached, a hush fell over the gathering. The host, a mysterious figure known only as the Master of Shadows, stood on the grand staircase. The tall, dark silhouette seemed to absorb the light, and their voice was a deep, haunting whisper as they announced a game. A game of fear. We were to pair off, each with a partner, and venture into the mansion's labyrinthine depths. Armed with nothing but a candle, we were tasked with finding a hidden object of great importance. The catch? The mansion was rumored to be haunted, and the object was said to be guarded by malevolent spirits. Whoever found it would be granted a mysterious boon, but only if they returned before dawn. I partnered with a girl named Mary, a fellow thrill-seeker with a determination that mirrored my own. Our candle's feeble flame cast long, wavering shadows on the cracked and creaking floorboards as we ventured deeper into the darkness. The air grew colder, and we could hear faint whispers like the distant echoes of tormented souls. Mary's fingers tightened around my arm, and I could feel her trembling. "Do you believe in ghosts?" she whispered, her voice quivering. I swallowed hard and tried to sound confident. "Nah, it's just an old house and we're playing a spooky game. That's all." But the doubt gnawed at me. The stories about this mansion were too vivid, too unsettling. The deeper we delved, the more certain I became that we were not alone. We heard strange noises, footsteps that didn't belong to us, whispers that didn't match the wind. The flickering candlelight played tricks on our eyes, casting fleeting, ghostly figures in our peripheral vision. Then we stumbled upon a room that froze the blood in our veins. It was a decrepit nursery, with dusty, shattered toys strewn across the floor. The walls were adorned with faded, tattered wallpaper, depicting scenes of innocent children playing, their eyes now vacant and eerie. In the center of the room stood a crib, and as the candlelight flickered, I could have sworn I saw a shadowy figure swaying gently above it. Mary's grip on my arm tightened even more. "We should leave now," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I agreed, and we turned to make our way back to the safety of the party. But the corridor outside the nursery had changed. The once straight path had twisted into a maze of narrow, winding passages. Panic surged through me, and the candle's flame wavered as I desperately tried to find our way back. As we wandered through the dark and winding corridors, the mansion seemed to close in around us, its malevolence growing stronger. We could hear whispers, laughter, and cries that echoed through the walls, taunting us. Every flicker of the candlelight cast grotesque shadows, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The hours crept by, and dawn seemed impossibly distant. I could see the fear in Mary's eyes as she clung to my arm, her fingers now cold and clammy. The mansion's horrors were closing in on us, and I began to doubt if we would ever escape. We had become unwitting participants in a macabre nightmare. Suddenly, a door creaked open ahead, revealing a room bathed in a strange, unearthly light. We cautiously entered, and in its center we saw the object we had been searching for, a glistening, ornate key. The key to what we didn't know, but our desperation urged us to seize it. Don't forget, at 10,000 subscribers, I'll give away a $100 prize or cash equivalent to a lucky subscriber each week, so make sure you subscribe. Now let's continue. With trembling hands, I reached out, but just as I was about to grasp the key, the room plunged into darkness. The candle's flame extinguished, and we were enveloped in a suffocating, abyssal blackness. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for the matches in my pocket, my hands shaking so violently that they were nearly useless. Finally, I managed to strike a match and ignite the candle. But when the room was once again bathed in its flickering light, the key had vanished. I could feel our chances of escaping this malevolent mansion slipping away. Mary and I decided to retrace our steps, to find our way back to the room with the crib and the nursery wallpaper. It was our last hope, our final chance at escaping the horrors of this place. But the mansion had other plans. It seemed to shift and change, its corridors leading us in circles, and the oppressive darkness pressed in around us like a suffocating embrace. The night stretched on, and as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the horizon, we stumbled upon the room with the crib once more. The ghostly figure above the crib was still there, swaying, and as our candlelight danced upon it, it turned to us with hollow, soulless eyes. I couldn't take it any longer. My resolve crumbled, and I screamed, my voice echoing through the haunted mansion. The figure descended upon us with a horrifying, inhuman shriek, and as it reached out, I dropped the candle, and everything descended into darkness. When the police finally found us, it was well past dawn. We were both shivering, huddled in the room with the crib, our faces etched with terror. The mansion had released us from its sinister grip, but the horrors we had experienced that night would haunt us forever. As we stumbled out of the mansion, I glanced back one last time, and the building seemed to leer at us with its broken windows and sagging roof, as if it reveled in the fear it had wrought. I knew one thing for certain. I would never forget the Halloween night I had spent in that accursed mansion, a night when the boundary between the living and the dead had blurred, and the terrors of the past had come alive to torment us. As I sat alone in the heart of the cemetery that fateful night, little did I know that nature had a sinister plan in store for me. The sky had grown ominous, and an electric charge hung heavy in the air. The impending storm rumbled with a ferocity that sent shivers down my spine, like the rumbling of some ancient, vengeful god. I had ventured into the graveyard seeking solitude, a place where I could ponder life's uncertainties among the sleeping souls of the departed. But as the first drops of rain began to fall, I realized that my quest for introspection was about to take a terrifying turn. The thunderstorm roared, and bolts of lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the cemetery's ominous silhouette. The rain came down like a torrent, pelting the headstones and drenching me to the bone. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around my heart as I saw the gravestones come to life in the eerie, sporadic light. Amid the chaos, I glimpsed figures, apparitions perhaps, or trickery of my imagination. They materialized among the tombstones, their forms twisted and unnatural, seemingly drawn from the nightmares of the dearly departed. Some were hunched and gnarled, while others glided eerily above the ground. I tried to make sense of what I was witnessing. Were these tormented souls seeking release? Or was this the manifestation of something far more malevolent? I couldn't be sure, but one thing was certain. I was trapped in a macabre theater of the supernatural, with no escape in sight. The thunderstorm intensified, and the heavens unleashed their fury upon the cemetery. Panic set in as I realized that the gate was my only way out. But the thought of touching that gate, with lightning dancing menacingly above, petrified me. The ground beneath my feet felt charged with an unnatural energy, as if the storm had infused it with the wrath of 1,000 souls. I cowered among the graves, drenched and trembling, praying for the tempest to relent. But the unearthly figures showed no sign of retreating. They circled me, their hollow eyes fixed upon my trembling form. The night felt endless, and I, a mere mortal, was powerless against the forces that surrounded me. In that desolate cemetery, where the living were outnumbered by the restless dead, I learned a lesson that I would carry with me forever. In the heart of a thunderstorm, where the boundary between the living and the departed blurs, the human spirit can be both fragile and resilient, and and the darkness within our own souls can be as chilling as the stormy night itself. I huddled among the cold, wet gravestones, unable to tear my gaze away from the grotesque, ghostly figures. It was as if I had unwittingly stumbled upon a spectral gathering, a congregation of the deceased that transcended the boundary between the realms of the living and the dead. They seemed to communicate in eerie, whispering moans that carried on the wind, sending shivers down my spine. Each flash of lightning revealed more detail, and the torment etched into the faces of these unearthly beings became painfully clear. Some appeared as if they had met tragic, untimely ends, their forms twisted in grotesque agony. Others bore wounds, as if they were reliving the moments of their demise over and over. As time passed, a sense of foreboding deepened within me. I began to question whether I had inadvertently stumbled upon a cursed graveyard, where lost souls were bound to this world by some malevolent force. The storm raged on, and I feared that my presence in that haunted place had awakened something dark and vengeful. Desperation gnawed at my resolve. The need to escape became overwhelming, but the gate remained my only way out, and it lay tantalizingly close, yet unreachable due to the ceaseless storm. The rain continued to pour, and the deafening thunder made the very air vibrate with dread. Every step I took toward the gate felt like an agonizing eternity, as if I were wading through an abyss of despair. I could feel the electricity in the air intensify with each passing second, warning me of the deadly consequences that awaited any misstep. The gate stood there like a guardian between worlds, and I, a mere intruder in a ghostly realm, was paralyzed with fear. In that nightmarish moment, as the storm and the apparitions closed in around me, I felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. My pleas for mercy went unanswered, and I was left to grapple with the chilling realization that, for that one terrifying night, I was neither wholly among the living nor the dead. It took what felt like an eternity, but the storm finally began to wane. As the rain ebbed and the thunder retreated, the ghostly figures slowly dissipated into the darkness, like whispers fading in the wind. I took my chance, trembling with fear, and made a dash for the gate. The moment I touched the cold iron bars, the world exploded in a blinding flash of light and deafening thunder. I collapsed outside the cemetery, soaked and shaken to my core, but I was free. The storm had passed, and with it, the malevolent forces that had held me captive. Though I had escaped that accursed night, the memory of the cemetery, the apparitions, and the relentless storm would forever haunt my dreams, a reminder that the line between the living and the dead is sometimes thinner than we dare to imagine. Chapter 1. The Odd Arrival. In the bustling world of fast food service, routines were essential. The employees at Benny's Burger Barn had their set patterns, clocking in, flipping burgers, and serving fries like a well-oiled machine. But among them, there was one anomaly: Jimmy. He had a peculiar way of going about his work, setting him apart from the rest. Jimmy was always the first to arrive at Benny's, no matter the weather or the ungodly hour. His colleagues couldn't fathom why he insisted on getting there so early. Some whispered that he might be trying to impress the boss, while others dismissed it as mere eccentricity. But there was more to Jimmy than met the eye. Dressed in clothes that seemed to have survived a food fight, Jimmy's appearance was far from the pristine uniforms of his co-workers. His hair was a perpetual tangle, as though it hadn't met a comb in years. But it wasn't just his unkempt exterior that set him apart. It was the peculiar odor that clung to him like an unwanted guest. As the sun rose over Benny's Burger Barn, the question lingered in the minds of the employees. What was it about Jimmy that made him such an oddity in their well-ordered fast food world? Little did they know that the answers to their suspicions were about to unfold most horrifyingly. Chapter 2. Messy attire, unkempt hair. Every day at Benny's Burger Barn, the employees donned their crisp uniforms, their hair neatly tied back, and their appearance reflected the brand's cleanliness and professionalism. But Jimmy defied these expectations. While his colleagues presented themselves with care, he seemed indifferent to his appearance. Jimmy's attire was a patchwork of stains and wrinkles, as if he had never bothered to change his clothes. His shirt bore the splatters of countless condiments, and his once white apron had turned a greasy shade of gray. The other employees couldn't help but exchange glances when he shuffled in, a living contradiction to the fastidious standards of their workplace. His hair was another point of contention. While everyone else adhered to the strict rule of keeping their hair tidy and contained, Jimmy's locks cascaded haphazardly, as though they had never met the embrace of a comb. It was as if he reveled in his unkempt appearance, a silent rebellion against the norms of Benny's Burger Barn. To his co-workers, it was baffling. How could someone disregard the basic standards of personal hygiene and presentation in a place where food safety and cleanliness are paramount? Little did they know that Jimmy's disregard for appearance was just the tip of the iceberg, and his secrets went far deeper than his disheveled exterior. Chapter 3. A Pungent Presence. While Jimmy's unkempt attire and disheveled hair were certainly strange, it was his distinctive odor that left the most lasting impression on those who worked alongside him at Benny's Burger Barn. A noxious combination of sweat, grease, and something far more sinister clung to him like a malevolent aura. It was a stench that permeated the air, forcing his colleagues to hold their breath when he passed by. The smell was so overpowering that customers began to complain. Some questioned the hygiene standards of the restaurant, while others simply vowed never to return. The management had no choice but to address the issue, but confronting Jimmy about his hygiene was a challenge no one wanted to undertake. Whenever someone tried to broach the subject with Jimmy, he would simply brush it off with a dismissive wave of his hand and a muttered excuse. He claimed that he had a condition that caused excessive perspiration and that he couldn't help it. His co-workers were left to suffer in silence, their nostrils assaulted by the pungent cloud that seemed to follow him wherever he went. The more time they spent in Jimmy's company, the more his peculiar odor became an unavoidable part of their daily lives. It was a foul presence that clung to their clothes, invaded their senses, and gnawed at their patience. Little did they know, this oppressive scent was just one layer of the mystery that surrounded their odd colleague. Chapter 4. The Garbage Duty Obsession. As if his peculiar attire and offensive odor weren't enough, Jimmy had one more idiosyncrasy that set him apart from the rest of Benny's Burger Barn crew. He had an unwavering obsession with garbage duty. While most employees viewed taking out the trash as a necessary but mundane task, Jimmy treated it like a sacred ritual. Without fail, Jimmy would volunteer for the garbage duty at the beginning and end of each shift. It was as though he derived a strange sense of satisfaction from hauling the heavy bags of refuse to the dumpster out back. His co-workers found this behavior bizarre, but they were more than happy to let him handle the dirty work. What puzzled them even more was the fact that Jimmy never allowed anyone else to take out the trash. If a colleague offered to help or take over the chore, he would become strangely defensive, insisting that he had it under control. It was as if he had a personal attachment to the garbage that defied explanation. The other employees couldn't understand why Jimmy was so possessive about a task that they considered menial. But little did they realize that this obsession with the garbage duty was the key to unraveling the unsettling mysteries that surrounded their enigmatic co-worker. It was a puzzle that one of them was determined to solve. Chapter 5. Tom's Suspicion Grows. Among the employees at Benny's Burger Barn, Tom was the one who couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that something was terribly wrong with Jimmy. It wasn't just the messy attire, the unkempt hair, or the overpowering odor that made him suspicious. It was the way Jimmy clung to the garbage duty as if his life depended on it. Tom had always been the observant type, and his intuition told him that there was more to Jimmy's behavior than met the eye. He began to watch his co-worker more closely, noting the way Jimmy's eyes darted around nervously when he thought no one was looking, and how he always seemed to have something to hide. One evening, after their shift had ended, Tom decided to follow Jimmy. He had to know what was going on. As he trailed his co-worker through the dimly lit streets, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. It was as if he was delving into a mystery that he might not be prepared to unravel. Jimmy led Tom to a desolate alley behind the restaurant where the overflowing dumpster awaited its nightly ritual. As Jimmy began to lift the lid, Tom watched in silent anticipation. What he saw next would haunt him forever, confirming his darkest suspicions about their odd colleague. Chapter 6: A Trail of Secrets. In the dimly lit alley behind Benny's Burger Barn, Tom's heart pounded like a drum as he watched Jimmy wrestle with the heavy lid of the overflowing dumpster. With a sickening creak, the lid was lifted, revealing a grotesque sight that sent a shiver down Tom's spine. Among the discarded food containers and empty condiment packets were unmistakable shapes, human limbs. Tom's breath caught in his throat as he realized the horrifying truth. Jimmy was disposing of something far more sinister than food scraps in the dumpster. The shock of the revelation was almost too much to bear. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of the macabre scene unfolding before him. As Jimmy hurriedly dumped a bag into the dumpster and closed the lid, Tom knew he had to gather evidence. He snapped a quick photo with his phone, capturing the damning image of the severed limbs hidden among the garbage. It was a piece of a puzzle that was becoming increasingly disturbing. But Tom couldn't confront Jimmy just yet. He needed more proof. He decided to discreetly gather information, hoping to uncover the extent of Jimmy's gruesome secret. Little did he know that delving deeper into the mysteries of his co-worker would lead him down a nightmarish path of horror and intrigue. Chapter 7: The Dark Discovery. As Tom delved deeper into his investigation of Jimmy, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was unraveling a web of darkness that stretched far beyond his worst nightmares. The photograph he had taken in the alley was just the beginning. He started to dig into Jimmy's background, searching for any clues that might shed light on the bizarre and unsettling discoveries he had made. What he found was deeply unsettling. Jimmy had a history of moving from one fast food restaurant to another, never staying in one place for too long. Co-workers from his previous jobs described him as odd and reclusive, always keeping to himself. But there were also whispers of strange occurrences and unsettling incidents linked to the restaurants where Jimmy had worked. Tom couldn't ignore the eerie pattern he was uncovering. He decided to discreetly gather information, hoping to uncover the extent of Jimmy's unusual behavior. Little did he know that delving deeper into the mysteries of his co-worker would lead him down a nightmarish path of fear and intrigue, revealing shocking truths that defied explanation. Chapter 8: Unearthing Jimmy's Horrifying Deeds. The unsettling history Tom had uncovered about Jimmy sent shivers down his spine, but he couldn't turn away from the disturbing puzzle that was taking shape. It was as though Jimmy had carried with him a dark cloud of mystery and dread throughout his previous employment at various fast food establishments. Tom felt a growing responsibility to uncover the truth behind his enigmatic co-worker. As the news of the macabre findings in the dumpster at Benny's Burger Barn spread, the authorities launched a massive manhunt for Jimmy. Tom's involvement in the case intensified, and he was haunted by the knowledge that he had worked alongside a man responsible for unspeakable horrors. The guilt and fear gnawed at him, but he was determined to help bring Jimmy to justice and find answers to the questions that haunted him. Investigators began to piece together the disturbing pattern of Jimmy's movements, and it became clear that he had meticulously covered his tracks, leaving no trace of his victims or his own identity. It was as if he had operated in the shadows, concealing his true nature behind the facade of a seemingly ordinary fast food worker. The hunt for Jimmy intensified, and the community remained on edge, gripped by the fear that he might still be out there, hiding in plain sight. The question loomed large. Where was Jimmy, and what drove him to commit such unsettling acts? The answers remained elusive, buried beneath layers of darkness and deception, as Tom and the investigators continued their relentless pursuit of the truth. Chapter 9: The Grisly Truth. Unveiled. As the manhunt for Jimmy intensified, Tom and the investigators delved deeper into the unsettling mysteries that surrounded their enigmatic co-worker. became apparent that Jimmy had left a trail of fear and confusion in every place he had worked. Co-workers from his previous jobs described him as an odd and reclusive figure. Strange occurrences and unsettling incidents seemed to follow in his wake. Tom's determination to uncover the truth only grew stronger as he learned more about Jimmy's unsettling past. He couldn't rest until he understood the full extent of his co-workers' dark secrets and the horrors that had been hidden behind the scenes at Benny's Burger Barn. The authorities sifted through the evidence with meticulous care, piecing together the fragments of a chilling puzzle. The horrifying truth began to emerge, revealing a pattern of malevolent actions and shocking depravity that defied explanation. It was a nightmare that had played out in the shadows, hidden behind the facade of a seemingly ordinary fast food worker. As the investigation drew closer to its conclusion, the community remained gripped by fear and unease, haunted by the possibility that Jimmy might still be at large. The question loomed large. Where was Jimmy, and what had driven him to commit such unspeakable acts? The answers were both chilling and elusive, casting a long shadow over the once ordinary fast food restaurant that had become the epicenter of a horrifying revelation. Chapter 10. Shadows of a Dark Legacy. The manhunt for Jimmy reached a relentless climax as authorities closed in on their elusive target. The community remained on edge, anxiously awaiting the resolution of the chilling case that had disrupted their lives. Tom, now deeply entwined in the investigation, couldn't escape the lingering sense of dread that had settled over Benny's Burger Barn. Finally, the breakthrough came. Jimmy was apprehended, his dark secrets laid bare for the world to see. As the evidence against him was presented, a shroud of horror descended upon the courtroom. The stories of his bizarre behavior, the gruesome discoveries in the dumpster, and his unsettling past sent shockwaves through the audience. In the end, Jimmy was found guilty of heinous crimes beyond imagination. He was sentenced to a life of imprisonment, ensuring that he would never again pose a threat to society. But the shadows of his dark legacy continued to haunt the memories of those who had crossed paths with him. The community, scarred by the revelation of the horrors that had unfolded in their midst, sought solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. Benny's Burger Barn, once a symbol of fast food normalcy, became a somber reminder that darkness could lurk in even the most ordinary of places. The questions lingered. What had driven Jimmy to commit such unspeakable acts? And could anyone ever truly understand the depths of his malevolence? It was a chilling tale that would forever haunt the collective consciousness of those who had witnessed the sinister secrets hidden behind the counter of a seemingly innocuous fast food joint. As I ventured into the eerie cemetery, I held my daughter's hand tightly, seeking to instill a sense of comfort in her young heart. The looming thunderstorm had forced us to take refuge among the somber graves, and I hoped to shelter her from its fury. The clouds above cast a foreboding shadow, and the lightning painted the scene with ghostly, fleeting illumination. As the first raindrops began to fall, my daughter's grip on my hand tightened, and her wide, innocent eyes reflected both curiosity and apprehension. I assured her that everything would be fine and led her through the cemetery, aiming to find a path to safety. The storm raged on, and the sound of thunder rattled the very earth beneath our feet. But it was what happened next that sent chills down my spine. My daughter, with a sudden burst of fear, pulled away from my grasp and darted in the opposite direction. "Wait! Come back!" I called out desperately, chasing after her. Through the sheets of rain, I glimpsed her small, shadowy figure disappearing among the tombstones. Panic welled up within me as I thought of the apparitions I had witnessed on a night like this before. I searched frantically, calling her name as the rain soaked through my clothes. After what felt like an eternity, I found her crouched beside 3 gravestones, her eyes transfixed on something I couldn't see. "Daddy, look! They're right there," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and wonder. I stared at the 3 standing gravestones, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was the same eerie trio I had seen earlier, the same ones that had filled me with dread. Their worn inscriptions were barely legible, and the figures atop them seemed to be staring into the distance, as though witnessing a dreadful event that only they could perceive. "I see them, sweetheart," I whispered, taking her by the hand. "But we have to go now, it's not safe here." Reluctantly, she tore her gaze away from the gravestones, and we rushed back toward the gate. The storm showed no signs of abating, and my heart raced with each clap of thunder. We reached the gate, and I reached out to push it open, but before I could make my escape, my daughter slipped from my grasp and fled back into the cemetery. This surreal pattern repeated itself 3 times. Each time, my daughter led me back to the same 3 gravestones, where she stood, trembling and staring at them as if they held some terrible secret. My frustration and fear grew with each occurrence, and I couldn't fathom what held her in their grip. But on the 4th attempt, as I reached the gate once again, I steeled myself and vowed not to let my daughter escape my grasp. With a fierce resolve, I swept her into my arms and made a mad dash for the exit, ignoring her protests. This time, as we broke free from the cemetery's oppressive grasp, the storm finally began to wane. The rain ebbed, and the thunder rumbled in the distance, as if in retreat. My daughter clung to me, her gaze no longer fixed on the haunted gravestones, but instead on the safety of our escape. We made it out of the cemetery, soaked and shaken, but together. The memory of that night haunted us both, a reminder that some places hold secrets that defy explanation, and that even in the face of inexplicable fear, a parent's love and determination can conquer the darkest of terrors. Despite our harrowing experience, my daughter and I never spoke of that night. It became a buried memory, concealed deep within the recesses of our minds. We moved on with our lives, and as the years passed, it seemed as if the cemetery incident had become a mere specter of our past. However, one fateful evening, as my daughter and I sat by the fireplace, a sudden clap of thunder echoed through the room, jolting us from our reverie. I could see the fear in her eyes, a reflection of the terror we had once shared in that accursed cemetery. It was then that she broke her silence. "Daddy," she began, her voice quivering. "Do you remember that night in the cemetery, with the 3 gravestones?" I nodded, my heart heavy with the memories of that sinister place. "I remember, sweetheart. It's a night I'll never forget." She hesitated, as if unsure whether to reveal something she had kept hidden for so long. "Those 3 gravestones, they called to me. I could hear them whispering, telling me to come closer. I don't know why, but I had to go to them." Tears welled up in her eyes, and I reached out to comfort her. "It's all right, my love. We made it out, and we're safe now." She shook her head, her voice a mere whisper. "But I saw them, Daddy. The spirits, the ones on the gravestones. They were trying to tell me something important." I listened in disbelief, wondering what message those long-forgotten souls could possibly have for my daughter. In the midst of the storm, had they conveyed some message, perhaps a warning to her young, impressionable heart? As we contemplated the eerie encounter, I couldn't help but wonder about the enigmatic connection my daughter had formed with those gravestones. What had they whispered to her? What secrets had she heard in the darkness of that night? We knew that the cemetery held untold mysteries, and although the storm had subsided, the haunting memories of that night lingered. As a family, we decided to confront the past, to seek answers and closure. With a mix of trepidation and resolve, we returned to the cemetery on a calm, sunny day this time, determined to unveil the secrets that had eluded us for so long. What we discovered within the shadowy confines of that graveyard would not only reshape our understanding of that fateful night, but also unlock a tale of unfinished business that had been buried for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself.
I was only 17 when I started hiking with my friends, but this time I went alone. I was 19 years old, and I knew that mountain like the back of my hand, Ben Macdui in Scotland. I never feared the dark or the possibility of a fall, but fate had something else in store for me. The air was thick with the scent of pine as I ascended the rugged trail, the moon casting an eerie glow on the rocky terrain. The night seemed to wrap around me like a shroud, and the only sounds were the rustling leaves and my rhythmic footsteps. The solitude was comforting, a chance to clear my mind and escape the hustle of everyday life. I don't know how it happened. One moment, I was navigating the rocky path with confidence, and the next, the ground beneath me gave way. The fall felt endless, a silent scream echoing in my ears. My body collided with rocks, branches, and unforgiving earth. Darkness consumed me, and consciousness slipped away like sand through my fingers. When I awoke, I found myself in a dimly lit cabin, the air thick with the musty scent of aged wood. My head throbbed with pain as I struggled to make sense of my surroundings. The room was adorned with faded wallpaper and creaking floorboards beneath my aching body. The only light came from a flickering lantern on a wooden table. Panic set in as I realized I was alone. My friends were not by my side, and there was no one to thank for rescuing me from the brink of death. The question gnawed at my mind. How did I end up here, and who had saved me? I staggered to my feet, the room spinning as I tried to piece together the puzzle of my bizarre situation. The door creaked open, revealing a desolate landscape cloaked in darkness. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the landscape. Determination fueled my every step as I ventured into the unknown. The forest seemed to close in around me, the silence broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. The chill in the air whispered tales of secrets long buried, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. As I traversed the unfamiliar terrain, the line between reality and nightmare blurred. The twisted branches seemed to reach out for me, and the wind carried whispers that sent shivers down my spine. Every rustle in the underbrush became a potential threat, and my heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. The cabin, my only sanctuary, was now a distant memory as I stumbled through the darkness. Shapes in the shadows taunted me, and I could feel unseen eyes watching my every move. The forest became a labyrinth of fear, and time lost all meaning. Just when I thought I couldn't bear the oppressive uncertainty any longer, I stumbled upon a clearing. Moonlight bathed the scene in an ethereal glow, revealing a sight that froze my blood. A circle of weathered stones and ancient symbols etched into their surfaces surrounded a mysterious altar at the center. In that surreal moment, the air crackled with malevolence, and the forest seemed to exhale a haunting melody. The answers I sought were elusive, hidden in the whispers of the wind and the shadows that danced upon the stones. As I stood in that forsaken clearing, a realization struck me. I had crossed into a realm beyond the known, a place where reality and nightmare converged. The line between life and death blurred, and I, a mere wanderer, had become entangled in the threads of an other-worldly tapestry. The forest held its secrets close, and I, a lone soul, lost in the enigma of Ben McDewey, could only wonder if I had truly escaped death, or if I had merely exchanged one abyss for another. At 24, the allure of adventure still gripped me, and this time my destination was the snow-capped peaks of the Italian Alps. With friends in tow, we embarked on a hiking expedition to Mount Gran Paradiso. The air was crisp, and the landscape, draped in a blanket of pristine snow, promised a journey filled with camaraderie and breathtaking vistas. As we ascended the mountain, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the snowy expanse. Our laughter echoed in the icy air, a soundtrack to the breathtaking beauty that surrounded us. Yet, as night fell, the once inviting trail transformed into a labyrinth of shadows. Somewhere along the ascent, we lost track of each other. The cold bit into my bones as I called out their names, their echoes swallowed by the vastness of the mountain. Panic gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, and a sinking feeling settled in my gut. Alone in the frozen wilderness, I trudged through knee-deep snow, desperately searching for any sign of my companions. The wind whispered haunting secrets, and the crunch of snow beneath my boots seemed to amplify the silence that enveloped me. Then, like a ghostly murmur, a voice drifted through the frigid air. It was soft, indistinct, yet strangely alluring. The sound seemed to beckon me forward, promising salvation from the isolation that threatened to consume me. Against my better judgment, I followed the ethereal melody through the snow-laden trees. As I ventured deeper into the unknown, a flicker of movement caught my eye, a fleeting glimpse of something shadowy, barely perceptible against the snowy landscape. My heart raced as I pursued the elusive figure, driven by a strange mix of fear and fascination. The voice persisted, guiding me through the labyrinth of white. My surroundings became a blur as I stumbled over unseen obstacles, the boundary between reality and hallucination growing increasingly thin. The air grew colder, and the landscape warped into a dreamscape of uncertainty. Then, just when despair threatened to overtake me, a faint glow appeared in the distance. A humble mountain hut emerged from the snowy abyss, its windows aglow with the welcoming warmth of safety. Relief washed over me, and with newfound energy, I hastened toward the shelter. The door creaked open, revealing a cozy interior bathed in the soft light of a crackling fire. A sense of tranquility settled over me as I stepped inside. To my surprise, my friends were there, huddled by the hearth, their worried faces transforming into smiles of relief upon my arrival. They explained that they had also lost their way, but had stumbled upon the hut earlier. The strange voice, it seemed, had guided us all to safety. As we shared our bewildering experiences, a distant howl of wind echoed through the mountains, carrying the weight of the untamed wilderness beyond. Soon after, the rescue team arrived, their reassuring presence reaffirming our return to reality. They guided us back to civilization, leaving behind the enigmatic mountain and the mysteries that lingered in its snowy embrace. The voice, the shadowy figure, it all became a haunting memory, a tale to be shared around campfires, a testament to the unpredictable nature of the mountains that guard their secrets with silent majesty. That was not everything. On the same trip, we met a psycho, a sinister force that lurked in the shadows of the very mountains we sought to conquer. The Italian Alps, with their majestic peaks and treacherous trails, became the stage for a chilling encounter that would forever taint the memory of our adventure. As we continued our ascent of Mount Gran Paradiso, the air grew colder and the landscape more foreboding. Unease settled upon us like a heavy cloak, yet the allure of the summit compelled us forward. Little did we know that our journey would take a harrowing turn. It started with fleeting glimpses, shadowy figures that seemed to materialize and vanish among the crags and cliffs. At first, we dismissed them as tricks of the mind, the byproduct of exhaustion and the harsh mountain environment. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow, the ominous truth revealed itself. The psycho, as we came to know him, was a faceless tormentor, a phantom that haunted our every step. Whispers of his presence danced on the frigid breeze, sending shivers down our spines. Paranoia clawed at the edges of our sanity as we navigated the winding trails. One evening, as the moon bathed the landscape in silvery light, we stumbled upon an abandoned cabin. The air within was thick with the stench of decay, and an unsettling stillness clung to the walls. It was there, in the heart of that desolate shelter, that we found chilling evidence of the psycho's presence, a macabre display of trophies, mementos from his twisted game. Fear etched lines on our faces as we realized the gravity of our situation. We were not alone on the mountain. An unseen adversary lurked in the shadows, watching, waiting. Panic set in, and every rustle of the wind, every snap of a twig, became a harbinger of impending danger. The psycho reveled in psychological torment, leaving cryptic messages scrawled on rocks and trees. The messages hinted at a sadistic game of cat and mouse, and the mountain itself became a labyrinth of dread. Our once tight-knit group fractured as suspicion and fear festered among us. One fateful night, the psycho's malevolent presence descended upon our camp like a vengeful spectre. His laughter echoed through the mountainous expanse, a haunting melody that chilled us to the bone. We fled into the darkness, our breaths visible in the cold air as we raced to escape the clutches of our unseen tormentor. Through the labyrinth of icy trails, we stumbled, hearts pounding, until we found refuge in a cave. Huddled together, we listened in terror as the psycho's footsteps echoed in the distance, his voice a maddening taunt on the wind. The mountain itself seemed to conspire against us, its towering peaks casting judgment upon the intruders who dared to disturb its ancient slumber. In our darkest hour, a beacon of salvation appeared on the horizon, the distant hum of a rescue team approaching. With bated breath, we waited, our eyes fixed on the cave's entrance. The psycho's malevolent laughter lingered, a sinister serenade that only intensified as the rescue team drew near. As the first beams of their flashlights pierced the darkness, the psycho melted into the shadows, leaving behind an air of unresolved terror. The rescue team guided us down the mountain, their presence a reassuring shield against the unknown. The psycho, elusive and malevolent, remained a spectre in the recesses of our nightmares, a reminder that even in the beauty of the mountains, darkness could take many forms.
Hi, I am Emma, your host for today's story, the creepy, unheard 911 call. In a small, peaceful town, nestled beneath a blanket of stars, Will, a compassionate and well-respected 911 dispatcher, was nearing the end of his late-night shift. His colleagues often remarked on his kindness and dedication to his work. It was a chilly, quiet evening, much like any other, until the inexplicable happened. As the clock ticked past midnight, the emergency call center buzzed with the usual low hum of activity. Phones rang, dispatchers typed furiously, and the air was filled with the tense energy of lives hanging in the balance. But then, something out of the ordinary occurred. In the dimly lit room, amidst the soft glow of computer screens, Will's headset crackled to life with a call that wasn't supposed to exist. No phone had dialed 911, yet a faint and haunting voice whispered through the line. It was as if a spectral presence had breached the boundaries of the digital world. "Jump," it implored, so softly that it was almost lost in the static of the line. "Jump to save the poor soul." Will's heart pounded as he strained to comprehend the surreal situation. There was no caller ID, no location information, just the eerie voice. His instincts as a dispatcher told him that this was impossible, a glitch in the system perhaps. But the voice, filled with a haunting urgency, seemed to seep into his very soul. In a moment that would forever confound his family, colleagues, and friends, Will made a choice that defied reason. Without hesitation, he pushed back from his desk and rushed to the nearest window. With the voice still whispering in his ears, he threw the window open and, without looking back, leaped into the abyss. The room fell into a stunned silence as Will's colleagues rushed to the window, peering down into the darkness below. The town awoke to the news of the unexplainable tragedy, and whispers of the mysterious call spread like wildfire. No one could understand why Will, the kindest and most level-headed among them, had acted in such a way. The call, which had not been recorded as it should have been, left an unsettling void in the hearts of all who knew him. Some believed it was a malevolent presence that had manipulated him, while others thought he had made a tragic, impulsive decision to heed the voice's cryptic plea. To this day, the town carries the weight of a mystery it can never solve. The voice on that inexplicable 911 call, and Will's final selfless act remain shrouded in the enigmatic darkness of that fateful night. A haunting reminder that some mysteries are beyond human understanding,